Hello and welcome back. Nothing to talk about as usual.
Nothing to say.
Well, what did you do last week? Maybe let's start there. Just
Let's see, what
update
did I do last
everybody.
week? Oh, I was on Tucker Carlson on Fox.
Oh, excuse me.
Exactly.
I didn't realize that you were a regular.
I am now. That's the third time I've been on.
Wow.
Exactly.
What were you talking about with Tucker?
So just for a second, right? Anyone who's listened to this probably would understand the type of stuff that comes out of my mouth is not what you would usually get on that network. But the more remarkable thing is I never got asked on any other networks.
So
Isn't that funny?
Yeah, it's a weird void.
It's a very strange position to occupy.
Yeah.
So what we were talking about was a thing called Wework.
Oh.
So Wework is this 47 billion IPO, which was cancelled, which was given the cash by this thing called SoftBank, which isn't really a bank because it's sort of a billionaire's plaything, and although it's kind of a bank. And basically the business model of this thing was as follows. I'm going to find this charismatic, long-haired, sort of like spiritualist narcissist. He's going to fly around the world on a plane, private. He's going to go to the most expensive places he can find to do 30-year leases on real estate because, of course, nothing ever happens, so 30 years perfectly reasonable. And I'm going to spend a fortune doing all these places up into micro offices.
Yep.
And then I'm going to get my income for doing all this by renting it to people who can't afford their own office.
Yes. Brilliant plan.
You can see how this is a brilliant plan. So what Tucker wanted to know was, does this point to something really fundamentally rotten yet again with capitalism and the financial economy? And if you go on to my Twitter feed, you'll find the clip, or you can just find the clip. And basically I said, yes, indeed it does. It's ridiculous. And the basic thing was the entire argument for the private sector doing investment is that you have lots and lots of little people and small firms and big firms all making these investment decisions. And some of them fail, some of them succeed, whatever. But in the aggregate, it's kind of like the wisdom of crowds. It's better than a big government planner doing it. But if you live in a world in which basically you've got essentially billionaires with soft budget constraints, they've got so much money they can put money into stupid stuff, fail, stupid stuff, fail, stupid stuff, fail.
Yes, yep.
Think unicorns, think Theranos, think Juicero, think WeWork, right? Then essentially the investment that's been done is bad investment.
Yeah.
And it's super concentrated and it's kind of a status competition amongst billionaires. And if that's really what's going on in terms of the investment function of the country, it's being very badly done. Interestingly, Fox was quite up for that.
Well, I mean, I was just thinking of the scooters, which are, I now see some back here in Providence, but they were taken off the streets.
And wasn't it great that they were gone?
Yeah, and the bikes are not, they just disappeared overnight. But that's thinking of the same type of
same
investment.
type of thing, exactly. It's not as if people don't have bikes.
Right.
I mean, there was a thing here in the Providence newspaper. There's a kind of, Providence has a little sort of NGO thing, which is bike recovery. So basically you take wrecks and abandoned bikes, whatever, and you give them to this lot, and then they fix them up and they give them to the community, right? And for the price of bringing in Uber and all these electric bikes which get hacked and destroyed and all the rest of it, for a fraction of that, you could have basically given that NGO like a tenth of that money and literally given everybody in Providence a bike.
But I think, I guess that's your point, is that it's the investment. You actually own that bike then.
Right.
And
It's your thing.
you fix it as opposed to the $12 I just spent trying to ride this electric bike and now I don't own anything.
And also I just will dump it anywhere that I possibly can because apparently that's all right.
And it just lays there on its side like a sad little thing.
Exactly.
Did you ask Tucker about his dinner with Mark Zuckerberg?
No, I didn't.
That I think this is pretty widely reported, not just a rumor, that Zuckerberg had convened dinners with conservative public intellectuals as a way to say, that Facebook isn't just for liberals and that it isn't biased against conservatives. And I was thinking more about this, and in a lot of ways, I mean, Facebook, Twitter have really become an arm for conservatives. I mean, that there isn't, although today Twitter announced that they weren't going to do political ads. I mean, it has become really a mouthpiece for conservatives, and not.
What's your evidence for that outrageous statement?
Well, and not even thinking about the stuff that's on the margins on either side, but just that that particular channel is able to amplify a particular message, is able to amplify things that I don't think that either the left or the liberals or however we want to categorize them has has leveraged or has used in a way as effectively as the right has.
There's a simple demographic explanation for this, right? So voters skew more right the older they get.
Yeah.
What's the old person's digital platform?
They love
It's Facebook. So while you're swapping cat pictures, you can send around a fake article about how 10 million refugees are sucking up all the welfare in the US and it's going to bankrupt the Treasury.
Yep.
Funny how that happens.
Well, you're looking at pictures of your grandkids, right? Because you're looking at all of this I think is really important in terms of the demographic point, and who really looks at Facebook. And it is hard to tell. I mean, it's even hard to tell on Twitter too what's advertising and what looks real.
Hence AOC's intervention.
Yes.
With Mr. Zuckerberg recently. So did you watch that?
Oh yeah, I saw a part of it. Yes. Yeah, I mean, she was very good on her questioning and very precise and really caught him in his most vague, ambiguous, evasive way. I mean, he didn't say anything.
Yeah, it's basically like commanded data, only he's unable to actually execute a command.
Yes.
It's like he's caught in a loop of, passive face and inability to answer a question.
But
he said we err on the side of freedom? Was that it? Oh my God.
Does he know that his company is not what it started as, and he just hasn't accepted it? It started as like we share pictures, and now it's become this. Has he accepted that?
I think he's weaponizing it. I mean, let's take Dorsey's stance with Twitter, right?
Yeah.
He knows that with deep fake technology advancing and all the rest of it, his platform is bound to get into trouble by people weaponizing these techniques.
Yeah.
And he says, I want to protect my company. I'm not going to do that. Well, it seems that Facebook are basically like, no, let's bring it on. And then, we'll steer it. Well, I don't know how you steer that type of thing. Good luck with that.
I know this is, for those who hate the bureaucracy, but it does feel, I mean, the FCC, they do radio, they do, and I know Elizabeth Warren and all this stuff, but you just think, why aren't they? Why isn't this more of a general call for the FCC to regulate them in some way?
Well, because the FCC at this precise moment in time, their job of regulation is deregulation.
Correct.
So that's not going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
But AOC was in the news for other reasons. What else did she do?
She endorsed her grandfather or grandfather-like figure,
Exactly.
and that would be Bernie. I mean, the optics looked really nice. I thought. You kind of wonder what the strategy behind that move is.
So what do you think it is?
Well, I mean, she's right. It's the continual pull of the left of the Democratic Party. I think she's really capitalizing on what she sees as her popularity. Obviously, Bernie's utilizing her for a younger demographic, et cetera, et cetera. It just seems like it's so early to put yourself out there, to put your neck out there like that. I mean, I think, he's got a lot of money, but I don't know that.
Well, what's the risk? What's the risk for her? I mean, Bernie, God bless him, can't really play the long game.
Yeah.
Right? Because he's really old.
Yeah.
She can. So essentially, who is she signaling to? She's signaling that, once Bernie's out of the way, because ultimately the party's never going to let him be in charge.
Yeah.
I'm here. I'm the one that represents the stance.
Presidential ambition?
Yeah, well, eventually, yeah. Oddly enough, that's how Carlson finished the segment.
Yeah.
He said, unless we basically get capitalism to start working properly, then you're going to get a radical regime. And if you want to know what I mean, just imagine AOC as president.
So radical on both sides too, right? We could interpret it as being that. I mean, we'll just have swings to the right or the left, depending on the mood of the country.
So what else has been going on in terms of the continuing implosion of the Democratic Party?
Well, I mean, Joe Biden has taken, I mean, he's
Is he alive?
I don't know. He might, I mean, this is how I worry about Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Is she still alive or not? Is this a weekend at Bernie's? He seems to be still alive. He's no money. They're really worried about the fundraising efforts. He seems to have he's like Mark Zuckerberg, no real answers to some pretty straight questions.
So does he actually, I mean, I know what Warren stands for, right?
Yes.
Warren wants a whole list of things that really annoy Wall Street, right?
Yeah.
And then I know what Bernie stands for. Basically, it's Medicare for all, college. What does he stand for?
I can get elected.
Right.
So I'm going to be maybe sometimes Obama part 2, but mostly it's electability, that I can go head to head with Trump and beat him. And so therefore, vote for me.
Don't you need to have at least some degree of policies, platform, ideas, vision, something for people to believe in, or something to do when you win?
I don't think so. I mean,
you just play pinochle when you win.
Yeah, well, I don't think you have to have vision or policy. I think it's, at this point, it really is just a grudge fest of an MMA fist fight of who can I mean, who can insult the next person and who can somehow, I mean, the most obvious point is who can actually get the voters out.
So let's say that he really stumbles. There's a rumor that Mike Bloomberg is going to be the next one who comes in to save everyone.
Yes.
So, I mean, surely this basically has the following written on it. The party with the bit of the party that has the money has to decide which of the two evils it can stomach more. Bernie or Elizabeth or both, because there is nobody else that seems to be lighting a fire under anything.
Well, I mean, I think in some ways that's the problem, though, is that the left is driven by policies and ideas. And this isn't a policies or ideas campaign. This is a campaign about, low energy Jeb Bush and, creating nicknames for people and like that sort of stuff. It's not, if you want to go head to head with President Trump on policy, that's not the debate that you're going to have. And so that's why I think an Elizabeth Warren presidential candidate on stage with the president, you just wonder how that unfolds.
But it could go the other way in the sense that, after 4 years of this stuff, people might be ready for a much more substantive conversation. We've had the to hell with all of you where it's all a fix, right?
Yeah.
And okay, so now we've basically had 4 years whereby, where we've got impeachment, we've got zero forward in policy regardless, et cetera, from tax cuts, so on and so forth. So maybe it's time to actually have that conversation again.
Well, and I think there might be a good opportunity for it now, talking out the other side of my mouth, because I mean, I obviously love politics. I'm exhausted by this. And even, to think about a whole nother year. So in that exhaustion, you do want some substance. You do want something that you can actually chew on. But I mean, it's a year from now, it's like a million years from now. Like, where are we going to be when the news changes as quickly as it does?
Exactly. So what's been going on outside of the United States?
Oh, gosh, like almost nothing. But actually, some really important stuff is always about Russia in some way or another. And they've made another move.
They have indeed. So there's a thing called Open Skies, which is actually curious because I think there's two international agreements called Open Skies. The one that you might have heard of has to do with the ability of, let's say, British Airways to fly from New York to Paris without going through London.
Okay.
Right? That's Open Skies. That's small beef. Small beer. I don't know where small beef came from. That's weird. So it's small beef. Anyway, that's small beer. The other one is Open Skies, the military agreement, which came in at the end of the Cold War and allows the United States, for example, to take one of its big planes and put some Americans on it and some Russians and some equipment and cameras and stuff and fly it wherever they want all over Russia.
Yeah.
And the Russians can do the same thing to us. They basically stick an Antonov, big 4-engine bomber, and fly it around and have a look and all the rest of it. And this is for transport.
Wait, over the U.S.?
Yeah, they do.
Okay, so we would fly over Russia. Okay.
Yeah, we fly over Russia, they fly over the US, right? And, in principle, we could fly over France, but, we know where the cheese is, so there's no real mystery there, right? So apparently the Russians have been blocking these flights for about the past 18 months. And in response, President Trump is rumored to want to get rid of the agreement. Now, of course, to be cynical about this, or at least to think clearly about this, the only people that would benefit from this would be Russia. So following on, the Kurds basically benefiting Russia, this week, another thing we're going to tear up is something else that is going to unilaterally benefit Russia. I don't believe the Russia conspiracy. I really don't. But it is kind of remarkable that basically everything benefits Russia. It's a bit weird.
I mean, this is Nancy Pelosi's point, and that picture of her standing up pointing at the president is all the roads lead back to Russia with you. And the reporting was that he called Putin about the death of the ISIS leader before he spoke to the House leadership. So, I mean, this is just like
really?
It's such a bizarre example.
Oh,
I mean, it's so bizarre.
Weird.
Yeah.
Oh, and also this week we officially did, I think, withdraw from the Paris Climate Accords.
Oh, I thought that didn't come up until next year.
Oh, no, it's November. So we've given official notice of the withdrawal. Okay. And then I think basically this week we said, no, we're really going to do it. And then we do it in November or something like this. Yeah, exactly.
So the secondary Open Skies agreement, just out of curiosity, is that what allows the long-haul Qantas flight from, was it New York to Sydney? Okay.
Exactly. It allows basically countries who are not the domiciled national airline to act as if they are in exchange for slots where in your country we can do the same thing.
Okay, and so that frees up the airspace.
Yeah, exactly. Greater competition, all that sort of stuff. I mean, it doesn't really do anything because all airlines are oligarchies and it's price fixing, as we all know. Try getting a flight at Thanksgiving and looking for a bargain and see how far you get.
Oh, I thought it was just because lots of people travel.
No. Anyway, well, maybe
and there's no Santa Claus, is there? Jeez.
Maybe
wow.
it is. I'm sure it is. I'm not saying that anyone's colluding at all. What else is going on?
Mark, so we have to talk about it. It's the queen in the living room.
No.
So today's October 31st.
It's an election. Marvelous.
Today was supposed to be leave day or exit day. I don't know someday.
Find me dead in a ditch before I die right to the EU. Nonsense.
But now there's going to be a holiday time election, and exit is now in January of 2020.
Yes, indeed it is. Happy Christmas. Yeah. No, so it's Happy Christmas for the election and Happy New Year. So it's kind of interesting. Apparently there's a sort of a centre-right think tank that works for the Conservatives. And they issued a report, and I forget what it was based on. Maybe it was Wigan or someplace like this, up north, right? One of these towns up north. And in the 1990s, one of the things that justified Tony Blair moving to the centre was a similar sort of demographic report on who swing voters were. Mm-hmm. And they identified Essex Man. And Essex Man was 35, drives a Ford Escort, doesn't like taxes, doesn't like unions, has quite left social preferences on some things, but basically has right social preferences on the economy.
Yeah.
Blah, 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 blah. And then, of course, they did this. So now they've identified, and I forget what they call it, Wigan Man or something like that. And Wigan Man is basically somebody who wants much more social spending, is actually worried about inequality, and is kind of like pro-Brexit, but not for the reasons you would think. So in other words, if you want to win the swing voters, you basically have to capture all the people that are still the natural allies of the Labour Party.
Okay.
Now, Corbyn comes out, and Corbyn's basically very bullish on this. Uh-huh. So the prevailing wisdom, of course, is he's dead in the water, he's 10 points down in polls, it's never going to happen. And his basic play is the same as last time. I'm going to get all the young people out. Uh-huh. Because there's 20% of the population that are exactly my constituents. Yeah. And then there's a Wigan Man who's up for grabs, right? And you've now got the centre party, the Liberal Democrats, who are neither liberal nor democratic because their only policy is cancel Brexit, right? Okay. So they're likely, if they're going to impact anything, is to take votes from the Tories, from Remain Tories.
Okay.
So things might have more of an upside for Labour than people think. Oh. So this suddenly gets a little more interesting. Now, I still think that Boris has got it in the bag. At the end of the day, the Conservatives do have a kind of structural advantage in the electoral system and all that sort of stuff. And of course, it just makes sense, marvellous. So we'll see how it shakes out. But yeah, election, and then we'll see what happens. But if Labour wins, it's not we do Brexit. Yeah. Then it's like, if I remember right, the sequence is you win the election and then you negotiate a separate deal, which is much more of a customs union deal. Yeah. And then you put that forward to the electorate again. It's something I literally don't. I think at some point Jean-Luc Picard is involved. And then maybe there's a clown car comes past, and then there's a horse called Dobby.
Wow.
Dobby comes in, that would be incredible. And then Black Rod and the Queen get on the back of Dobby and then go riding off with Jean-Luc Picard into the new Battlestar Galactica remake.
And maybe Batman makes an appearance just to do some fighting.
Yeah, exactly. There's Black Rod because it's replaced by Batman.
Yeah. So is there any play, or is because Corbyn is like the Bernie Sanders of the Labour Party, where Corbyn is replaced and Labour's like, actually, we want to go with someone who could possibly be elected?
No, because you see, the guy before Corbyn was a guy called Ed Miliband.
Oh, yeah.
And Ed had this wonderful idea of just basically making it £3 to join the Labour Party. Yeah. And anybody could join online. So 400,000 people did. Uh-huh. And I don't know, half of them could be Russians as far as I know. But the point is, they managed to, because of the whole Labour project had completely crumbled internally, they managed to rebuild the party with this young organisation called Momentum. Uh-huh. And Momentum are entirely loyal to Corbyn.
Oh, I see.
So at the party congress, Momentum put forward a motion to remove the deputy leader, McDonnell, out of the blue.
I see.
And Corbyn didn't exactly squash it. They managed to put it down, but that's the power. The power lies with that organisation, and that's entirely Corbyn. Corbyn has survived 2 assassination attempts already, and there's nobody clearly out there with any type of support base that could challenge him.
That's actually a good lesson for Pelosi then, when we think about AOC, right? Is that if there's any fissure or any distance between them, that something like that could happen, and then suddenly the cracks in the Democratic base are huge and just wide open.
Well, we said this before. I mean, the Democrats basically spent 20 years deciding that there was no future in partnering with organized labor or poor people, and got fully into bed with Wall Street.
Yeah.
Wall Street doesn't want to give money to the two people that Democratic activists want to elect. And and Pelosi sits right in the middle of that mess.
Yes. Yeah. And trying to just keep all the...
Trying to keep it all together, right? But in fact, what really needs to happen is they need to have that fight. They need to basically decide who they want to be when they grow up. Are you still the party of Wall Street? If you are, what's the point in you? And this is what we see right throughout, Germany and a bunch of other countries, that sort of putatively center-left parties that have become the handmaidens, if you will, of finance and industry rather than representing their constituents, get abandoned by their constituents.
I mean, it is fascinating that in impeachment, which is the other big Dobby unicorn riding in the living room, is the party cohesiveness, is that there are few cracks. I mean, in the Republican, he doesn't, this is not impeachment worthy, whatever line it is that they're using, that it's being done in secret, smoke-filled back rooms, as our producer John mentioned. I mean, there's all of these different, but they've stuck together and even those on the margins that are just well, we don't know. They haven't said full-throated, throw them overboard yet. So, I mean, that's just fascinating to me. It's just...
But there's a clear analog to Corbyn. Right?
Yeah.
So basically, Corbyn takes the dead husk of Blair's New Labour project and rebuilds a youth movement, and then takes it over, survives assassination attempts, turns it basically much more to the left. What does Trump do? So remember, low energy Jeb exclamation mark, right? $100 million worth of spending for no apparent reason. No one has any resonance in the primaries. Trump walks in, basically demolishes the party and says to everyone who's an incumbent, you either sign up with me or you're on your own.
Yeah.
And now they're all utterly beholden to him. So they sink or swim with him.
And instead of remaking the party, he's taken the party loyalist and he has shored up their loyalty in such strong ways that, I mean, I'm sure you saw this, that, they were yelling at the baseball game, lock him up. But that is in DC, this is unlikely to happen anywhere else. But his base is sticking with him really believe all the...
But you got to remember why. I mean, for the first time in 2 years, the bottom 20%, 40% of the income distribution has had wage growth.
Yeah.
There is actually full employment. Credit is unbelievably cheap.
Yeah.
And, if you're somebody who lives in a carbon-heavy state that, relies on, let's say, extractive industries, etc., for your employment, this guy's protecting your interests by saying that global warming is lefty bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, there's real reasons for people to do this.
And it's just so hard to think of someone cutting through that. This is just a dream, and using the language and the pictures and the symbols that everybody understands. And that's what I just think that, the Democrats I agree with you, have to have that debate. But I don't know if it's against the background of the presidential campaign, is when I kind of wanted to have them 3 years ago and have it sorted out by now. But it's just, So
let me ask you a question.
Yes.
Do you think he's going to win?
Yes. President Trump re-election, yes, I do.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So basically, we can now wrap up the next 12 months because...
I wish.
No, we can't. But in a sense, we can't, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because when you get to the point whereby, and I find this incredibly disturbing on multiple levels, that many Democrats are wishing a recession.
Oh, 100%.
Right. Which means that sort of ordinary working people, the type of people most likely to be hit in a recession, who lose their jobs and lose their homes and lose their health care, right? You're willing to do that just because you hate this guy so much.
Yeah. No, I've heard the same thing. Yeah. The only thing we can pray is for a recession.
Yeah. It's just what? Really? You're kidding me.
Yeah. You want your neighbors to be thrown
disturbing.
out?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, how about basically, no, you figure out who you want to be, you put your money where your mouth is, and you go out and you have a straight argument with this guy. And if you lose, and stop making excuses.
Right. But at least lose on the merit, lose on principle, or lose on policy or an idea or something.
Don't wish for a recession to save you. That's kind of really scummy.
Yeah. On that point, what are you doing as we wrap things up here to avoid the news? Because it's very...
You mean sort of your daily... So the New York Times decided to say... I'm not a subscriber at the Times, but they decided to send me basically an impeachment daily briefing.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think I actually asked for this.
Yeah.
Right? And at first I was reading it, and then I thought, why am I doing this? It's just horrible. So what am I doing to avoid the impeachment?
Wait, hang on.
news?
Is it a principled stand not to be a subscriber to the New York Times?
No, it's not. It's just a practical one. I subscribe to the Financial Times. It's just a better newspaper.
That's much more expensive too.
It's much more expensive, but it's also sort of where it's the stuff I care about mainly.
Follow
the money. Yeah, they're paywall. Yeah. It's a serious one.
Yeah.
So I've decided to not read it anymore because it's just really annoying. And the notion that we're going to have to, let's think about this. How many impeachment briefings are we going to get until they do the impeachment? Well, probably 100.
Oh, I mean, well, wait, what do you mean by the time they do, like they actually
like when this thing actually happens, right?
Probably, yeah, 3 months. Yeah, I would say 3 months.
Right, so I got 100 impeachment. No, I don't care at all about this. No.
Okay.
How are you going to avoid it?
Well, I mean, this was from our last podcast, eating a lot of pumpkin flavored foods. And today is Halloween, so Reese's.
You're not pumpkined out at this point?
No, I mean, I don't know. You just eat it. It doesn't really taste like pumpkin.
See, again, this is another sort of, despite being an American and being in the United States for nearly 30 years now, I just don't get pumpkin pie.
Oh, pumpkin pie.
Yeah, it's sort of like, it looks like someone pooped into a dish and added sugar. It's just, and it tastes just as bad. I mean, it's just
What do you do for your Thanksgiving desserts?
We don't have Thanksgiving. Only you lot have Thanksgiving.
But I mean, you guys are, like to be gracious, show gratitude. No, you're like, you did that. Oh, okay.
No,
you just
certainly not to people whose land we stole and who we murdered by disease and violence.
Details. I mean,
let's give thanks to the people that we ripped everything off from.
Jeez, wow,
exactly.
Real bah humbug attitude.
I know.
Well, I'm like deep into TV right now in terms of like watching like all of
anything except the news.
Yes, yeah, right. Anything like drama, like something that's 45 minutes. I can Succession, Stranger Things.
Oh yeah,
too.
That's good. So I heard this on British radio. There's a thing called The Now Show, and I don't know if this is true, but I'm going to repeat what they said. That apparently Sky News in Britain, which is basically kind of Fox Light, right? They actually now have a news channel or a news show which excludes all Brexit news.
Oh, seriously?
Because people are just sick of it. So it's like great. Sky News, Brexit free. So maybe we could do that. Maybe we just have sort of, the Daily News with absolutely no mention of impeachment.
No impeachment at all. Well, it's funny because Apple TV is coming out with all their new stuff. Disney just came out with their new channel. HBO is doing like an HBO Max. I wonder, I mean, they must be playing on our exhaustion of all of this stuff.
How much time is there to watch? I mean, the streaming wars, right? I mean, how do you... I maybe have time to watch one thing once a week. How am I going to choose with all this content that I'll never have time to watch?
That's a good question. Like how much, I mean, is there a maximum capacity of how much there can be?
I mean, it's like, Spotify has 90% of all recorded music, right?
Yeah.
Even if you're a total musophile, how much of that content are you ever going to listen to?
I think very low percent, like
tiny, like rounding at a fraction, right?
Yeah.
And, as if you're a total musophile. So you've got to commit to multiple series across multiple platforms to decide the streaming war. I think you just fragment the market and you jump from one to one. Everybody wins. I mean, next week, guess what starts? His Dark Materials. That's going to be awesome. Right.
I love that series.
And I still have to catch up with the second episode of, what do you call it again? Watchmen. Wow.
Well, I love that series. I didn't realize that was going to be a series. That's something to look forward to. Well, we have a big surprise, but we're going to make the announcement next time we do the podcast.
Exactly.
So this is the cliffhanger.
It is. I'm pregnant.
All been waiting for.
And John Mazza is the father.
This is a lot of information to take in right now. I'm really surprised by the.
Okay, that's not it.
Congratulations.
There'll be something else.
But much less surprise-worthy, I think.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we'll see you back here in a couple weeks, I think.
Exactly.
Right.
For our Thanksgiving special, where I will abuse pumpkin pie eaters again.
Thank you.
Bye.